What's up, everybody? This is Chef Omar Perrone from Arc Hospitality, and this is Ask Arc. Today we're talking real estate, and I have two of my most favorite people, in the whole wide world, Wade and Hannah. Welcome, guys.
How's it going?
Hi, everyone.
So good to have you.
Excited to be here.
Hey, when talking restaurants, location, it's of course one of the biggest things that comes up, and I don't know anyone who knows more about restaurant real estate than you guys. So I thought I would have you here. The first question for you two, Hannah and Wade, is how's your day going?
Good. We're happy it's Friday. And It's been great weather all week.
And the body knows it, right? Can you feel it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ready for some day drinking?
Yeah, ready to go explore some bars.
Rodeo weekend. Got to go do our due diligence on some more bar and restaurant clients over the weekend.
R&D.
Ready to do some R&D. So what's the difference between real estate, generally speaking real estate, what people understand from real estate, and restaurant-specific real estate?
I think the biggest difference is it takes there's so much less inventory due to parking codes, and Houston here we get to enjoy no zoning, but there's less opportunities to actually do restaurant spaces, so there's less inventory, and then you get potentially bad spaces. So it helps to be in the know, and it helps to have a group that is known for doing restaurant work and knows how restaurants work from an economic and operational standpoint. And that's what Hannah and I have spent a lot of time crafting ourselves in.
Yeah, and just for the restaurant scene in Houston, it's so competitive, so it's very important to differentiate yourself with a broker that actually lives in that space, because if you have somebody who's in that world, they'll know who's behind on rent, who has a lease coming up for expiration, and so it's a very tight-knit community.
I like this, and I know we don't only service new restaurant operators, but I do work a lot with first-time restaurant owners, and I can never stress enough the importance of having a restaurant-focused broker like you guys, because they do know that location, but they're always so worried about how much is your service going to cost them. So how much will your service cost someone who's starting and opening a restaurant?
The biggest misconception with using a broker, especially on the tenant rep side, is that it's going to cost you some money, and really our services are free. We're paid by landlords, and so there's no cost to the tenant or to our client, and that's where we add a ton of value. Not only, in Hannah said, knowing of locations that aren't out there with a sign on it. Most of the time, it has a sign out there. It's either not a good space or it's already spoken for. But also in negotiations, which there's lots of things that first-time operators or even experienced operators don't really even understand. So.
Yeah, and Chef Omar, I think a great case study of that is one of your clients that you sent us to work with. We were able to see the deal that the landlord had proposed them before they thought they had a restaurant-focused broker in the picture. Then Wade and I were able to come in, and we, as of today, are moving to lease with this operator, and with an entirely different deal structure than we started with about a month ago.
It was brutal. And another thing that you kind of touched on a little bit is just like people who work with you. People in this industry respect you and what you've done. When people, whether they've got an idea that you're turning into a great concept on your side, and they come to us and they're ready to go, there's more legitimacy to them working with a group like us or one of our competitors, because the landlord knows that we've qualified them, they're working with you, that you've qualified them, and so they've got a much better opportunity to go after a competitive space, because anything of quality in this city is going to be competitive, and we're going to be fighting other people for space.
And it'll be controlled by the top-tier brokers in the market as well.
So you guys out there trying to open a restaurant, this is something you got to keep in mind. The broker will not cost you any money. It's really going to cost your landlord. So that if that's something that keeps you up at night, you don't have to worry about that. But you really need to have people that know exactly what they're doing and that can negotiate a really good deal for you.
Yeah, it's a big misconception that if you don't use a broker, then you're going to get more off your rent, or you're going to get more TI, or in reality, the listing broker is just going to get paid. So it's those amounts that we get paid by the landlord are already underwritten. So
and the difference in what they would have saved by not using a broker can't even begin to compare to the value that we'll save them by the time we're done negotiating a deal.
Right, you got to understand it's a 5 or 10 year commitment for most cases. So you definitely want to make sure you're reading
it
line
can be,
by line.
it can be easy to take like the short-sighted approach to say, oh, well, I can get this discount if I don't use a broker, but really everyone should be kind of playing the long game and recognizing over the course of 5 or 10 years what value, we would be adding.
So again, talking about real estate, you said something called TI, and I know what TI is, but it's my job here to play like I don't know anything. So people out there wondering, what's TI?
Yeah, so TI is tenant improvement allowance, and that is a negotiable dollar amount, usually based on a dollar per square foot basis, that the landlord is willing to contribute to the tenant for the build out of their space. The way it works is once you're open for business, you'll get a check cut in that amount. So it's not an upfront amount. The tenant will still have to front the cost of the build out. But that's a number that's negotiable. Coming back to if you're not using a broker, sometimes landlords won't even acknowledge or offer that. And we're seeing, more of these restaurant TIs get more aggressive from landlords for tenants, which is great. And again, it's always something that can be negotiated. So we always keep a comp database of deals in every neighborhood that have gotten done in the last year. So we know what's reasonable. So we can go to a landlord and let them know, we were able to get this here. This is market.
Yeah, and we know what certain landlords are usually landing in for deals that they've done in the past, either with us or competitors of ours.
I love that we're talking about TI because people don't know that it's a big part of owning a restaurant is obviously financing it, right? So understanding that some of your biggest expenses, and of course leasehold improvement is going to be one of the biggest ones, that you're not alone, and that the landlord, there's actually some things that they can do for you. So do landlords like to lease to restaurants, or do they prefer not to? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it breathes life into a shopping center or into a space, and if you've got a really creative design and concept and it's well executed, I mean, it can put your property on the map. There's certainly negative stereotypes that come with restaurants, being dirty or taking up a lot of parking, that kind of thing. But
no, we don't.
Yeah. But no, absolutely. I think that it's like I said earlier. The problem we run into is there's not enough restaurant space that can be permitted out there. So now landlords are being even more selective than ever and really choosing what concept's going to fit with other concepts that are either in the center. If they're merchandising it from scratch, then who's going to play well together in the same sandbox, so that they generally get excited.
That's very interesting. So as a restaurant operator, you're actually adding value to someone's property, right? Bringing your concept, your unique food, unique service style, you're actually enhancing this property. So that's very interesting because people don't think about, at least in my opinion, first-time restaurateurs don't think about it like that. So what does someone need to have ready before they start talking, say, with you guys, and start thinking about finding the right site? Because a lot of people really love putting their shoes before they put their socks on. And so I'm here to really try to help people make sure they put their socks before they put their shoes on. So before they talk to you guys and they're ready to start actually shopping and looking for sites, what do they need to have?
It's a good question. And I mean, it just depends on what phase of development they're in, right? We've worked with restaurants that have nothing more than a one-page business plan to restaurants that this will be their 100th location. So we kind of intercept restaurateurs in all sorts of F&B concepts from any phase of their life cycle. But Omar, to answer your question, I guess if we're talking about somebody from scratch, right? Landlords care, as Wade had just mentioned, because of how competitive restaurant space is right now in Houston. Making sure that all of our ducks in a row ahead of time are huge. In the past, landlords haven't cared to see financials until it's sometimes even moving to lease. Now it's one of the first things they want to see.
Hi, nice to meet you. Can I see your money?
Right? It's a crazy, it feels, it's like, wow, you haven't even met me yet, but okay. But that's something that we're seeing on the front end more and more recently because the qualifying process is happening much more quickly up front. So wanting to know business plan, and even sometimes references if they've, been a tenant somewhere else, or if they've been, for example, in a salon suite with a bigger concept, but now are going out on their, on their own, or a food truck now going on their own. Just the due diligence is a lot stronger than it's been in the past.
And to add to that, I mean, landlords are asking for decks or mood boards or anything to understand a concept if it's not existing.
Right.
And if we can, as Hannah and I, as somebody who's going to go out and represent the brand as an ambassador to the brand and go sell it like it's our own, we want to understand exactly what it is that the operator is trying to achieve, who their customer is, what the PPA is, and then we can start matching it to different trade areas in Houston. And Hannah touched on it a little bit earlier. If it's somebody who has multiple locations, 3 or 4 in the city or one other one, and I want to do that second one. The second one's almost as important, if not more important than the first deal, because you're trying to replicate some kind of flagship. And so we spend a lot of time analyzing who are your customers and where can you replicate this kind of business and why are you being so successful here or not being successful somewhere. And so having something that we can analyze off of whether you have a location or not is kind of where we come in and then can start advising on where you should go. Oftentimes we have to lead people to water who come to us, hey, I've got this idea, I want to open up a sandwich shop and I live down the street from here and this is a shopping center my uncle owns. And we're more than happy to tell you that's probably not a good idea, and this is why. So, any amount of data that we can have based off of what the idea is trying to be or previous stats will help us go out and be successful in finding a space.
So, of course, there's real estate for new operations. There's real estate as part of a growth and expansion strategy. And talking about the new guys. For a landlord to take you as a new tenant is just as big as a commitment as it is for you to become, their tenant. So landlord basically just wants to make sure that you know what you're doing, that you're serious, that you have a really good concept, and that you have a solid team. So definitely having that pitch deck ready, the financial model ready, and just making sure that you have a plan. I think if I understand that correctly.
Yeah. And another takeaway I would tell new restaurateurs in today's environment is there's still a misconception that COVID-19 so I hear we can get a lot of free rent, or I heard they're gonna
that was for about 2 months.
Yeah, and so, we still to this day, today I had a conversation with a woman who asked me, don't we get all this free rent? That's what we're hearing because landlords are desperate for deals. And so to be very clear in today's environment, as we enter into March 2022, that is not the case at all. It's harder to find space than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Because the industry is roaring back. We keep talking about this. COVID is in the past, in a way, and the industry is roaring back, and we just want people to be ready for what's coming up next. So you said something interesting there. It's when do I start paying rent? And that question always comes up. So let's say looking for this new place, we just signed a lease. When do I start paying rent?
Well, that's another thing that we help negotiate with, and there was a school of thought that 120 to 150 days was enough time to go get a permit and build out, and now it could take that long just to get a permit. So Hannah and I put a lot of emphasis on getting as much, and people use the term free rent even though it's not free rent. It's a permitting and build out period. We'll try to get as much of that as possible and then try not to tie that to your opening to where there could be free rent on the back end. A lot of landlords will want that period to stop as soon as you open for business.
Right.
But I'd say now we're 180 days average probably.
Yeah, sometimes even more. And then in some instances, we've been able to tie it to receipt of permit. So 120 days after receipt of permit. So that eliminates any
gray area.
Because Houston has just been so backed up. It seems like everyone's getting kicked out to the back of the line for any tiny mistake that historically hasn't been as nitty gritty looked at, and so because of that, we're just having to add an extra layer of caution.
It's interesting. We're talking about rent commencement here, and a lot of, especially first-time operators, have a lot of trouble hitting that date, getting to the rent commencement day and actually be ready to open or be open. And that's why, in a nutshell, I think that's why ARC exists. We really are here to help restaurant operators succeed. And opening a restaurant, it's like you have to wear unlimited caps, and you have to do so many things, and it's really important that you surround yourself with people that are experts in the field, that really are restaurant focused, because last thing you want to do is have your Aunt Sally. I always use Aunt Sally to do your design, because she's really good with interiors, and then again, your design is not done correctly, then your permit set's not right, then you fail the permit, and then you're behind, and then next thing you know, you're paying rent for a place that's not even half built. Yeah,
there's no better way to start a restaurant venture than paying dead rent.
Exactly. Let's see, what other some other good questions about real estate? You said LOI. I think that's probably an easy one, but I would like for you guys to explain what is an LOI.
Hannah?
An LOI is referred to as LOI, letter of intent. We also call it proposal. So LOI and proposal are kind of interchangeable terms, but essentially this is a 2 to 3 page document that outlines deal terms, and this is what is negotiated by brokers. It's non-binding, so that's where we handle our negotiations. Once you move to lease, we always recommend not only an attorney, but a restaurant-focused attorney handle those negotiations. But basically, it's the basic business terms, and it's saying it's kind of the prereq for the lease. It's saying if we can agree to these basic terms, then we can move to the lease. So this will include, size, patio, rent commencement, rent, TI, parking, signage, all sorts of kind of just the basic terms to make sure that both parties can come to agreement before everybody starts spending more money and really getting into the weeds of the lease.
I love how we're setting up the expectation here. So how long does it take to go from like, oh, I saw a site, I have some interest, till actually getting a lease signed? Best case scenario, because I understand some may just be 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, typically that cycle, if let's just say if we have just met and you're opening up your new restaurant, then, it would take probably a couple weeks to put our thoughts together of where to go. And then let's say we've identified a site after a tour. LOIs everybody's all excited and it's a super easy process, can be 2 weeks to 6 weeks.
Just depends on who the landlord is.
Generally a month. And then the lease process, unfortunately, is also starting to take a lot longer than it used to, but that's generally anywhere from 6 to a month and a half to 2-3 months sometimes. We've had them take much longer. We've had some get signed very, very quickly, but it just really depends on all the parties that are involved. I mean, you can have an attorney that's not a real estate specialist who's in court for 3 weeks, who didn't get to look at the lease for 3 weeks, and then and that kind of stuff happens a lot. Like you said, there's people plug in people that aren't necessarily specialists, and that's not the worst thing in the world, but it's best in this industry to surround yourself with those that are really good at what they do and known for it.
Yeah, and in how competitive today's environment is, normally an LOI could trade back and forth up to, 5 times even. And now when we know there's other interest on the same site, we just try to go in as strong as possible and minimize the back and forth. Right. Luckily Wade and I have such a good relationship with all the landlords or brokers on the other side of the deal that it's a quick phone call to kind of just speed up the process and be much more efficient, just so that we have that much quicker of a turnaround time than the next person out there.
We toe the line of cutting to the chase without giving up what we want.
Right.
So,
well, that goes to tell you that things take time. And so if you are putting together a concept, again, whether it's first or second time or it's your 10th concept, because the negotiation phase takes so long, this is why you want to make sure that you already kind of have your designer aligned, maybe your contractor sort of aligned at the same time. So you're not starting to sign the lease to then go out and try to figure out who's going to be your designer and then start designing, because then next thing you know, you're going to be paying rent in the middle of construction.
And you should have that absolutely, like you said, like going while you're doing something else in parallel. But the last few leases we've been working on have had, and this isn't uncommon, but I'm seeing it more and more to where it is like the norm of the plans need to be in the lease as an exhibit. The contractor you're going to use needs to be approved by the landlord and put in the lease as an exhibit. So all these things to basically stop people from having to do them after the lease is signed, and I think it's good. We like that.
Absolutely. I mean, the landlord doesn't want you to pay rent while you're not open, because they want you to succeed.
Right. That's another misconception. I mean, a lot of times it costs money for that landlord who might, maybe just because you're writing him a check, that you might think that he's not on your side, but he picked us for a reason. He believes in the concept. He believes in you as an operator, and it costs money to re-tenant a space, a lot of money. So they definitely want you to be successful. So those kinds of steps help.
Oh yeah, 100%. Now let's get a little bit more into the actual site selection. So can I get a liquor license anywhere? Is that something that people have to find out or think about when they're looking for a site? Like, can any place be good for a liquor license, or do you have to look for certain things?
Yeah, I mean, the only really big red flags in a location is if you're a certain distance from, an elementary school or a church and like a rehab. I mean, there's a short list of things that you...
Or my mother's house.
But you know what? There's attorneys that all they do is focus on helping you get liquor license approved where you couldn't have gotten it, historically. So, I mean, that's something we haven't ever run into any issues with it. We've had a few instances where we have had to plug clients in with attorneys to help them combat that. But for the most part, most of our restaurants are going into projects for a reason, and those projects are not in areas where they would not be allowed to get a liquor license.
We've seen churches sign off. I mean, Houston's great because you can do pretty much whatever you want to do here. It's the best place in the world to do business. Schools and such are not so easy.
When it comes to exclusivities, that's kind of a headache for us sometimes, because even though we can be and we like to be very creative when coming up with a concept, there are only so many things that you can create, and also there are trends that are just really popular. So there's a lot of people that are interested in the pizza category, in the taco, and the burger, and so on and so forth. So how do you go about exclusivity provisions in leases?
Yeah, it's like we said earlier. I mean, us understanding the concept and understanding what the real primary source of business is. I mean, generally we'll try to go ask for a more broad. If it was pizza, for example, I don't know if we'd go in and say all Italian food, but we would say, pizza, and then generally that would get kicked back to where nobody else could have, primary sales can be pizza, and then starting at 50%, starting at a lower percentage, and then, moving it up.
Also, in exclusivities is also based on a percentage.
It can be. It's all negotiable.
And we've done it where we name specific restaurants.
Like direct competitors. Yeah, but some landlords just don't operate. Some landlords don't do exclusivities. And, I also think there's a bit of a misconception on that any competition is bad. I mean, I think we're kind of seeing a change in trend for especially bars, but both bars and restaurants that, it's not a bad thing to have a competitor next to you or by you, right? It's almost more of like the more like-minded types of tenants and operators can be around you, the more your location or your neighborhood is going to be a desirable spot for consumers because they have options. So it's a fine line to toe because, of course you don't want a direct competitor next door to you or in the same project, but it is good to have competitive businesses around you.
Yeah, like you want people that love pizza to go to that area. I think the sun certainly shines for everyone, and there's two sides to it, right? There's the side of where you want to protect your business, you want to make sure there's some sort of exclusivities in your business, and then there's also where you're in the opposite side when you're trying to get into a project or a development, and there's another hamburger. Oh,
right. But so many of these places have salads. We do Salada's work, and how many places have salads on their lease? So on their menu. So what we'll often do is we'll exclude others whose primary sales and define primary sales as 20% or more, and then push it a little bit further. If the landlord's pushing back on that to really 35 to 40%, and then we'll try to name some names as well. But you can get really broad. So try to get what we can.
We've given a little bit of a overall kind of strategy for people that are starting. So what's happening with the guys that have 10, 20 locations? They're looking at real estate more of a part of their growth and expansion strategy. What can you guys do for someone who's looking to go from say 10 to 100 locations?
That's a big part of our specialty and the niche that we've carved out over the years. It's so fun taking somebody whose passion is in food and seeing like a dream grow into reality, and we long play with those people. We know that there's more than likely going to be more than one, but we also have several corporate assignments as well as looking at. Let's just say that there's a national group that has 20 locations in Houston. We like to look and see what are the most successful units, what are the least worst performers, and try to draw ideas of why the top three are the top three and the bottom three are the bottom three, and then go replicate it or see what needs to be moved. We keep an eye on emerging trade areas, places like Fulshire, places that have grown along the Grand Parkway here in Houston, Garden Oaks even, has been here just right smack dab in the middle of Houston basically, that has now evolved into this really, really strong household income dense area and that is underserved. So we create strategies not only for in Houston, but work with with restaurant specialists across the country. So if your restaurant is franchising, we've got brokers in LA, we've got brokers in Miami, we've got all over the country that just treat the business the way Hannah and I do. Genuinely excited about it, are well respected. We think we are, but
have access to the best sites, we would like to think we do.
Yeah, and those people, we might work with a franchisor, wherever they're located in Texas or somewhere else, but we oversee the process across the country and help with that national strategy. So, we're seeing growth across so many different brands right now, and it's because COVID accelerated the trends. You see the patios and the drive-thrus and all that, but you also saw a push out of or death of brands that were dying slow deaths. They just died much more quickly. And the brands that were able to adapt and be resilient and had a good product and a good structure, they were not cash poor. Now they're taking all of this investment from the government and investment from the fact that they were successful during these times and reinvesting into themselves and growing. So, and then also now people are getting into getting out of their day-to-day jobs and opening franchises. So there's just a lot of activity in the restaurant world.
Which, is great, but also means more competition for spaces.
Right.
Which kind of ties back to what we've been saying this whole time.
It ties back to you want to have the right team in place because a lot of these deals, a lot of these sites are not even in the market.
Right.
You got to be connected with people like you guys that, that have access to those sorts of deals. Like, when people are probably 2 months behind in rent already, and we're already coming up with the next concept for it.
Oh yeah, you better believe we have a short list of restaurants that we're calling their landlords once a month.
But like, did they pay this month?
Yeah.
We wish them well, but
this is, to kind of touch on that again, this is super. What we love about this, other than it's being involved in something we love, like F&B is so awesome, and we love to talk about it. And we think people love to hear us talk about it, but it's very data driven. If we were in the office world of real estate, we wouldn't hurt a company if we put them in a space that the CEO had trouble getting to from his house or had to sit in traffic for, right, or couldn't take a left in. If we did that with one of our restaurant clients, they're going to close. Or if we put them next to, let's just say, an underperforming national competitor and didn't know that group was underperforming and why, or understand why, then they're probably not going to do well. So we track all the restaurant sales for both national and local groups through different software, and then just our relationships with landlords, and take that, plus with a little bit of common sense, and then help come to a conclusion that's going to lead to a great site.
Yeah, location definitely matters. So how do you help someone figure out what's the right neighborhood? Hoping, of course, they came up with a really cool concept, they have the plan, they have the pitch deck, financial modeling, it's already done, and they're funded. They just have no idea where to go. So how do we figure out where to put a concept?
That's a good question. I think most people come to us with a general idea of where they want to be. Understanding the demographic, the age group, is this a dinner spot, a lunch spot? Do you care more about weekday traffic versus weekend traffic? AM side of the road, PM side of the road, all these things kind of come into play when we're trying to determine what kind of space they want, who they like to be around versus anyone that they don't like to be around. And just kind of understanding what, they're looking to get out of this business and, who that target consumer is.
How many calls a day are you getting for people wanting a drive-through?
People want second generation freestanding drive-throughs with lots of parking.
Yeah.
We have tons of them.
Yeah, exactly. A drawer full of them.
But, it's not one size fits all, but for groups that are coming in from out of state, or even somebody who has a great idea with the ability or the capital to grow from, this is a 10 store or 10 unit plan. The general rule of thumb for Houston has always been start inner loop in one of the 5 or 6 mature trade areas in the inner loop, plant your flag, create some buzz. People come into Houston by the population of Atlanta every single day from our suburban markets, then go back out. And so and we've got really, really strong suburban markets as far as restaurant sales go. And so, plant 1 or 2 flags within the inner loop, move out west or move out north, or south towards Webster, that kind of stuff. So it's not always one size fits all. You can start in the suburbs, still come into the loop and still be very successful, or stay in the suburbs. But traditionally, that's how us and most of our competitors look at rolling out Houston for the first time.
So I said I was very excited about, what's going on right now, and excited about ARC, excited about the future. What made you guys join ARC, and what's ARC hospitality for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that, so Wade came over to Colliers where we work, which I don't know if we've even said that yet.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's just gonna come
Plug
right
it.
under here.
And, one of the draws is that we are such a big, worldwide company. I mean, we are in, we have retail offices in 66 countries. But, what we didn't have, which really matters just as much as that, is having, that group of people that you trust, because a successful restaurant or hospitality or real estate deal in general doesn't start and end with just us. Having the core team in place to execute on everything from design to build out to consulting to concept development. I mean, that all goes hand in hand. And so to just have a trusted group of people that we know we can send our clients to has been awesome for us and a game changer, and gives us more time to just know that we can pass off our people to our other people and continue on without having to second guess if they're in good hands.
Yeah, I don't know how many times we pointed. Every question was, well, we would then hand them off to somebody who's really good at this, or we need that concept developed, so they'd be hopefully talking to you or have the plan together. So I mean, having all those people in one place who have been qualified by somebody like yourself or all of us within the industry is amazing. Houston, for being 7 million people, is like the smallest little big town when it comes to real estate and the restaurant scene even more so. So everybody really knows everybody, and it's a great group of people with super good reputations. And like I wanted to bring it up earlier, but we had a Hannah and I had a deal with a group that was extremely well capitalized. It was a good plan, but they didn't have it on paper yet, and we had a site that was a very competitive site. We were fighting for space with a restaurant in the trade area already that does really well, and we almost didn't get the space until we introduced them to Omar, and his team helped them put together a plan, and literally just telling this landlord that, hey, we hooked these guys up with Culinary Matters, and they're going to take the process, they're going to develop their whole plan, sealed the deal. And that's not an exaggeration. The deal probably wouldn't have made had they not engaged you guys. And so having that relationship and the ability to plug in great people with other great people is so big.
That's awesome. And that's what we want. We just want people to play to their strength, and we want people to be surrounded by a team of professionals that can actually help them achieve what they want.
Yep.
Be successful. We're happy to help people continue to make the world a more prosperous and delicious place, like I always say. And I'm very thankful for you guys to be a part of this. If you guys were in front, Wade, you're talking to 18-year-old Wade, what would you tell him?
I don't have enough time for that. I think I don't know. I'm super happy I'm very, very fortunate to be where I am, to have such a great partner, and we're doing what we want to do. We're working with people we want to work with. There's certainly things that I would love to give myself advice along the way, but as far as where I'm at in my career, I'm very blessed and fortunate, and we're just really getting started. And that's what I think the most exciting thing is people are taking notice of what we do as a team and how much we really enjoy this, and we've got so much runway ahead of us. I think that's what gets me excited every day.
Yeah, that's the most exciting part, is that, we haven't even been working over a year together. So to think about what we can achieve over, the years to come based on, where we're at today has so much potential that just gets us fired up.
The future is definitely very promising. I'm very happy that you guys came. Hey, thank you so much for coming today. If you guys want to see more content about restaurants, reality, this is what ARC is. Ask ARC is where we discuss today's restaurant operators' reality. And I have nothing else to say. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Wade. And I'll see you guys.
Thank you, Omar. Thanks, everybody.
Later. Bye.